Hello everyone, Marcio Cardoso here with another important video. And this time it's about drugs and how we can better win the war on drugs in particular. And hint, as a progressive, I don't think it means fighting an actual war or being that tough. We gotta be smart, but not tough. What is this term war on drugs? How did it begin? Well, in the 1970s, Richard Nixon said, we want to get tougher on people who are drug users, drug dealers, and whatnot. So we started instituting much greater penalties, much harsher penalties for those who use drugs, particularly hard time. You go to jail, and you go to jail for a long time. But is that working? No. If people want to use drugs, they usually find a way to use drugs. If people want to sell drugs, they usually find a way to sell drugs. And that's kind of the way it works. It's not hard to find this stuff. If you want to find it, you find it. Unfortunately, I think the war on drugs has been completely counterproductive for a lot of Americans, especially in low-income minority communities. We've seen, since the mid-70s onwards, many young men, particularly African American and Latino men, incarcerated due to using or selling drugs. And you wonder, is it the best thing? As a progressive, I don't think you should be put in jail for committing a nonviolent crime. If you're selling a substance that is potent like cocaine or LSD, those are dangerous substances. And I'm not advocating in this video for a substance like LSD or cocaine to be legalized. I think the fact that those substances are illegal is correct. But selling those substances, I don't think should get you jail time. I think people who sell these substances, I think people who use these substances should be dealt with treatment, prevention treatment. So if you're a user, find ways to get off your addiction. And if you're a seller, let's find ways to make sure that you're not selling. Because if you're selling it, you obviously need money. You're not selling these goods because you enjoy it. You're selling it because you need to find a way to make money. And clearly, you haven't found any way to do it other than selling something that's illegal. And for those of you who have watched my previous videos where, wait a minute, you advocated in a previous video, those who sell guns, guns could hurt people like drugs, and those who sell guns should be punished and whatnot. Let's clarify. For those of you who haven't seen my previous video, and also for those who have and might be thinking I'm contradicting myself, I believe that if someone sells a gun without conducting a background check, that's foolish, particularly when you consider that guns are meant to harm other people. You use it to harm someone else. And that there should be a background check conducted before you sell that gun to anyone else, no matter how it's sold. Drugs, it's different because typically when you sell a drug, someone's going to use it for themselves. Or if they're giving it to someone else, they're giving it to them willingly. No one usually forces drugs into someone. That's typically not what happens. Unlike a gun, where you use a force on someone else. So drug dealers, they need to be dealt with. I don't think you should just allow people to deal drugs all the time, willy-nilly. But you need to find a way to help these people out. Why are they not getting money? You need to find a way to help these people out, whether it's setting up employment centers or job training activities to get them into the workforce to be productive workers so they can find a way to make ends meet. But drugs are all about supply and demand. If people want it, there's always going to be a seller. So what you really need to do is to decrease demand. If you decrease demand and decrease the amount of people who want to buy these drugs, then naturally the sellers are going to go away or be reduced. So for people who want to buy these drugs, it's not about, oh, you're going to jail because you're using these dangerous drugs. It should be more about, let's find a way to break the addiction. Let's find out, why do you even want these drugs in the first place? Usually people consume these drugs to give themselves a high or a calming downness because they probably are dealing with stressful things in life. So treatment programs should be the way to treat these people, not prison. I believe in certain drugs, the fact that they're banned and we have harsh crimes on them shouldn't even exist at all. I think, for instance, marijuana. How do you fix the issue with marijuana? I think you could just flat out legalize it. Because unlike cocaine or heroin or drugs that clearly lead to one's demise, marijuana is not quite in that boat. It doesn't mean you could smoke all day. I'm not advocating for that. You smoke all day, all the time, marijuana, it's probably not good for you. But in small moderation, marijuana is no more dangerous than alcohol. And if anything, it's less dangerous in moderation, far less dangerous in moderation than tobacco. You're never going to see tobacco made illegal. You shouldn't smoke. I'm not advocating for that. But it's always going to stay legal. For the same reason that alcohol is always going to stay legal. 1920s, we had something called prohibition. In the 1920s, you could not sell, consume alcohol. If you did, you were breaking the law. And yet everybody did it. Where there's a will, there's a way. The demand was there, so guess what? There was a supply. The Al Capones of the world made lots of money. What was the resolution to that? Reversing prohibition and having an amendment to the Constitution to fix what had happened a decade earlier. Prohibition's over, alcohol's legal again, 21 and over. And for the most part, it works. Yes, there's tragedies related to alcohol. It happens. But you want to ban alcohol? See what happened in the 1920s. Do some history. Do some research. It was a pretty gruesome, violent time. Things got better once prohibition ended. And alcohol was legalized again for people who were 21 and over. And that's why it should stay that way. And why, even though I would never advocate for smoking, the fact that tobacco use is legal for 18 and over, fine. And that's why marijuana, the most common illicit drug that's used today. You look at all the illicit drugs being used, marijuana is by far the most illicit drug that's used. In some areas, it's far more commonly used than tobacco now. That's a drug that simply needs to be legalized. And I think 21 and over works. You do that, now you're allowed to sell it legally. Now you can tax it. Government can make money off of it. And now anybody related to selling marijuana or using marijuana no longer has to worry about going to jail. Dramatically decreases the jail population. Because most drug-related offenses are tied to the drug of marijuana. But again, not all. Cocaine dealers, LSD dealers, heroin dealers, that's a different situation because those are far more dangerous substances. And those substances, for that reason, need to stay illegal. But I don't think people who use those drugs should be punished by going to jail. Because simply using that drug is essentially a nonviolent, and in many cases, victimless crime. You're not harming anyone but yourself. In some cases, other people are indirectly harmed, so it's not always a victimless crime, but in many cases, it is victimless, and it's nonviolent. You're doing harm to yourself. You need treatment. You need to be taken care of. And it's been proven, studies have shown that with treatment, you can recover. Just simply going to jail is not the solution. Why aren't the laws changed then? Why don't they make it so that treatment is the answer for drug abuse as opposed to prison? Why can't we just simply legalize marijuana? We've started to do that. Here in California, it's now legal. It's legal in many other states as well, including Washington, D.C. So why don't our federal leaders who live in that city do something? Well, of course, we know. The tobacco industry and the to a certain extent, the alcohol industry like things the way they are, particularly with marijuana. They see marijuana as a competition. And as long as it's illegal, it's good for the tobacco industry and the alcohol industry. And they lobby and give money to congressmen to keep things the way they are. Well, what about people who abuse cocaine or heroin or whatnot? We don't want those to be legalized, and I don't. Okay, well, how do we help those people? Why don't we have more treatment? Why do we have harsh prison sentences? Well, there you go. There's the other problem. The prison lobby gives money to Congress, gives money to politicians to keep things the way they are. Because right now, we have a high number of for-profit prisons in this country that benefit financially with the ever-increasing prison population of young, predominantly minority men. And this was something I mentioned in one of my other earlier videos, identity politics, the fact that minority young men are being taken advantage of in our system. And so because the prison industry makes money, and because the tobacco industry makes money with the way things they are now, they are funding a lot of money to keep things the way they are, preventing stuff from getting done. So what can we do? Spread the word as much as you can. It's part of why I'm doing this video. Share this video with other people once you see it. Upvote it, downvote it, whatever. But get the word out. We already know how to fix this crisis with drugs. It's treatment, not prison. And the main drug of marijuana, it's legalization, not criminalization. Those two big things can make a big difference. Dramatically reducing or eliminating prison sentences for people who use drugs, but rather having treatment, which would then lower the demand for drugs because people are being treated, which by then lowers the sale of drugs, less people are going to sell it. And then the issue with marijuana, which has been proven to have some medical benefits, legalizing that completely takes that off the illicit market and makes marijuana something akin to alcohol. People's lives would be improved, a lot less people in prison. I think it would greatly help low-income communities, especially minority communities, because a lot of those young men who are in jail now get out, now get a chance to start their lives over. And are all of them going to come out and be perfect saints? Probably not. But I suspect most of them will come out with a grateful opportunity. And they're going to make the best of it. They're going to make the most of it. Unfortunately, this is stuff that helps lower income people, 99%ers, if you will, people who are not high and mighty. Whereas people right now who are living a good life, taking advantage of the way the system is, they would lose financially. So that's why we don't see the change. Solutions are simple and straightforward, have been studied. We know what the solutions are. The problem is having the will to execute these solutions, having the will to stand up to the politicians who don't want it, or giving the politicians the backbone they need to stand up to the prison industry, who want to keep prison population numbers high, and to stand up to the tobacco industry, which would hate to see a legalized competitor in marijuana. But we need to do this. It'd make a big difference in many people's lives. And if you're someone who's watching who happens to use particularly marijuana, makes a big difference to you. Because even if you live in a state where it's legal in its entirety, like California, it's federally illegal. And if you heard the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, the other day, he's coming after you, or at least he's going to try. So we need to make these changes. The sooner the better. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.